Webster Tarpley is coming up in the gauntlet, up next. He's Ron Paul demonization campaign. All lined up. The truth matter.
Just the truth.
Just the veritas.
Just the facts.
Is this yours?
And that water is mine too.
Which one?
Hold that for a minute. All right, let me just say this first. Webster Tarpley is a great political mind. He has a master's in, economy. He's an economist, but he also has a doctorate in history. Very smart guy. I've done my own research. His perspective on history is dead on. He has had an obsession with Ron Paul in the last 6 months. Him a cockroach, you name it. And now, even though Ron Paul, yeah, I heard it. Even though Ron Paul, okay, we're going to go to you in a minute, Webster. Even though Ron Paul is now not even, obviously in the running now because election fraud and things, he obsesses on what the Huffington Post, Salon, all the big foundation groups have put out. When they came out and confronted me this week, they said, well, this the founder of PayPal is giving him millions. As Ron Paul said 6 months ago, I have no control over who gives me money. Yes, one member of the Bilderberg group gives me money, but the rest of them attacks him. They want big government for corporate welfare. But I like Tarpley, and if he wants to obsess over Ron Paul, that's fine. So you can go over that first, because I like Tarpley. Okay? But then I'd like to ask Tarpley about what he really knows about the first Russian in modern history at Bilderberg, Kasparov, all the things that means, the fact that I'm no fan of Russia or China, but compared to our criminal government, there's no doubt the West is trying to start a thermonuclear war. There's no doubt they're moving weapons in. I mean, Medvedev and Putin have said they'll nuke the West. There's no doubt they're using al-Qaeda in Syria. There's no doubt they took over Libya, and Webster had the courage to go there and cover that. I respect Webster for his courage. I really do. And I think this Ron Paul obsession is a dead letter. But he wants to talk about it. We're going to cover it. So can we just spend 5 minutes on that? And then I really want to take on things that I know you're accurate on. But again, to say that one Bilderberg, because they want to co-opt the libertarian movement to try to privatize things, not real privatization, but have government takeover of something, and then corporations act as government. That's not what Ron Paul stands for. Webster's point, though, about Rand meeting with Mitt Romney, I knew that Romney and them were talking about that. I knew that was being discussed. And Rand told me on and off, he said, well, I won't compromise on my ideals, so that's the difference. I probably won't even get it. Webster sees that as total proof of a sellout. I know the system and the establishment demonizes Ron Paul. I know from our moles inside, including people in security and other places, I'll leave it at that, that when they pull up, they see us as Ron Paul supporters out there protesting them, and they say, I hope that, Ron Paul dies in a plane crash. I mean, that's a real source. That's real stuff. I didn't just go from Tucker, who I trust, because he's proven stuff. I called my people, and they said, well, we didn't hear that, but yeah, they cuss Ron Paul. And then Webster jokes and says, oh, my sources, the made their pensions, they hate him. They don't get pensions working at the Marriott. Yeah, whatever. The precious food stamps. Look at the stuff. The point is, you're getting us dependent on the bankers. The point is, get into your Ron Paul stuff, but then I want to lead into the other areas. So Webster, Richard Reeves, doing a great job, is going to hold the mic over there. And we are streaming out on two systems, Infowars.com, PrisonPlanet.tv. Ron Paul, the enemy of humanity. Tell us about it.
Well, let's actually start with Rand Paul, right? You seem to think that Rand Paul has some kind of integrity. My information is that Rand Paul made a pilgrimage secretly to the offices of the Weekly Standard and essentially deal with William Crystal that Rand Paul would commit to being open to an attack on Iran, which he is in public. And it says that he's willing to entertain an attack on Iran, and that he would vote for economic warfare measures against Iran. Now, we've just had Ron and Paul flirting in public with Romney, and he's obviously making a bid for the vice presidential spot. Now, based on the Bilderberger group here, looks like Mitch Daniels is in the line ahead of Rand Paul. But even so, we should remember that the whole idea of the Ron Paul campaign was to get Rand as vice president. In other words, if you've been knocking yourself out, sweating blood, giving money bombs and whatever it is, to Ron Paul, you got to realize that the whole purpose of that is to get Rand on the Republican ticket for vice president, because even though he has no qualifications, he thinks he should be president. It reminds me of other people that we've passed. The fact is, though, that Romney has now gone over the 1144 mark on his own power, so he won't need Ron Paul at the convention to transfer the delegates to him. So at that point, Rand...
My info is that Romney reached out to Rand. I mean, Rand shouldn't meet with him?
It's the deal in the background. Now let's talk about the deal. The deal is that Romney is a weak candidate, and he knows it.
He needs conservative credentials.
He's got to have two wingmen. He's got to have a left-wing man. That was his cousin Huntsman. Huntsman being this Mormon billionaire. So Huntsman was the main purpose in those debates, was to run interference for Romney, to fend off attacks, and whoever was the main enemy of Romney at the time, whether it was Bachmann or Kane or Perry or Gingrich or Santorum, whoever it was, the main activity of Ron Paul was to attack Romney's main enemy at any given time. He also did other services. In Virginia primary, here we are in Virginia, we had a primary. This was a head-on, a one-to-one primary, Paul against Romney. Ron Paul punted. He wouldn't campaign because he was afraid of defeating Romney. Now, that might have caused the collapse of the Romney campaign. So Ron Paul's goal is to keep Romney as the leading candidate, but at the same time get enough delegates so that he is indispensable for Romney. And he wasn't able to thread a couple of other things. Romney wanted to avoid debates. The Georgia debate was aborted because Romney said he didn't want to go. Ron Paul agreed he didn't want to go. The Army, same story, didn't want to go. So Ron Paul is a kind of an auxiliary to the entire Romney campaign.
That was always a talking point. What's your proof?
This is my own discovery. I was out of the gate on the 10th of January with this, the 10th of January. My proof is, if you watch those Republican debates and you can't see that Romney is there to be is being helped by Ron Paul, you don't have any political judgment. In other words,
Paul ran 5 different ads against me. That was an establishment Democratic talking point.
This was the first one. It was mild. It was that he was a flip-flopper. Everybody else was a criminal or whatever he was. They are. But Romney was only a flip-flopper. Let's take the Michigan primary. The function of Ron Paul is to take 10 or 15% of anti-establishment Republican voters and put them in the deep freeze. Put them in the candidate who's never going to win, can't get the nomination. Romney's problem was that the party is maybe 40% people, you know, country club, plutocrats, whatever, who would vote for Romney. That leaves 50, 60% who would vote for an anti-candidate. So what Ron Paul does is take 15%, sometimes 17% of the anti-establishment Republican votes off the table. Now, Michigan primary, look at a couple of others, but Michigan is the clearest. Romney won Michigan by a paper-thin margin. That's the Ron Paul effect. Now, Ron Paul didn't win Michigan, but he did pay with his money for anti-Santorum election ads. So you're in the presence of a deception operation. This is not real. Ron Paul is famous as a nepotist. My figures are that he's got 60 people plus of his relatives on the congressional office payroll or on the payroll of his campaign. Jesse Benton, that a lot of people in the Ron Paul campaign tell me they can't stand, is to Ron Paul's granddaughter, I believe, right? And remember, the entire purpose of the campaign is nepotism. It's to feather the nest for little Rand so that he has a future. And again, let's look at who this is. This is Romney. Now, people, I think the better people who are interested in Ron Paul, they don't really understand economics, although they should.
So Obama's going to save us.
No. The Bilderberg people are turning for Romney, Mitch Daniels. But they just...
The word I've got is Romney is in from all the big power brokers.
But that's the Bilderberg. Bilderberg is throwing their weight, which is considerable, on the side of Romney, Mitch Daniels. But now you want to get me away from this this last point that I had.
I'm not trying to get you away from anything, Webster. I came over here to interview Jim Hooker, and I nicely, you're my friend. I said I'd interview you. You were interrupting, telling me shut up, and now you're saying I want to keep you for the audience. That's bullshit. Now listen, that's bullshit. No, 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 no. I'm just saying, I'm interviewing you. I'm not trying to censor you, but I have views on all this. That's all. For heaven's sakes, I'm not trying to shut you down. Make your point. I want to get your point on Al-Qaeda, Syria, Libya, Russia, the Russian at the meeting. I want to talk about that instead of this obsession about Ron Paul.
A vote for Ron Paul was a vote for Romney, and this is the tragic reality, and I sympathize with people who were duped in this regard. Remember, Ron Paul runs as an anti-war candidate, even though he voted for the Afghan war. You should remember, Ron Paul voted for the Afghan war. Like Kerry, he was for the Afghan war before he was against it. Now he's against it. Now let's look at Romney. If you're supporting Romney, what are you going to get? The biggest warmonger. Romney is out there saying that Russia is the main strategic enemy of the United States, and Romney is out there saying that he doesn't want the option to attack Iran on the table. He wants it in his hand. A vote for...
Well, there you go, Webster. Ron Paul's a warmonger. 2 days after 9/11, he says, okay, use of force to Afghanistan to get bin Laden. Now you're saying he's a warmonger. He's been against all these damn wars.
He voted for the Afghan war. Barbara Lee voted
I think this is sophistic, Tarpley. I'm very embarrassed.
Against it. Ron Paul voted for it. You look for a statesman, Barbara Lee is a statesman. Ron Paul didn't make the grade.
The difference is you have a belief in the state to empower. Ron Paul doesn't.
You're dodging the issue. If the big thing with Ron Paul is that he's against imperialist wars, how come he voted for the Afghan war? Where's the beef? Now, underlying all this, right? We're talking about the Mormons, okay? An important issue. The theology of the Mormons is that they are anti-black. The holy books. Yeah, right. The holy books of the Mormon Church say that the black population, Afro-Americans, are the spawn of the people who sided with Lucifer in the great battle in heaven. This was then taken away in 1978. I would say that Ron Paul represents the southern jurisdiction of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, which means the old Confederates.
Mason first group, some good, some bad. There's no proof of Ron Paul in Masonry. You are pulling out. Why are the globalists so upset at Ron Paul?
The daughters are in the Rainbow Girls. The parents are all Freemasons. I think there's a pretty good case.
Proof of that? They never produced the proof on that. You're going off rumors, Tarpley.
I think that's pretty good research. Anyway, let him.
So now, I thought you liked the American system. I'm not endorsing the Masons, but George Washington, all those guys. Now, if you're a Mason, you're the devil.
Not the devil, but when you put that together with the rest of this stuff, what I see, I see a convergence between the Scottish Rite Freemasons, Mormonism, which is a religion which has profound Freemasonic overtones.
It is a Masonic religion.
Yeah, I think there is this element to it. Yes. So. Right now we have Rand Paul flirting with Romney in public, and if I were a Ron Paul supporter, my worldview would be crashing to the ground right now, after all that work and all sacrifices. Now, Alex, let me talk to you.
Be sure that states' rights movement is destroyed.
Let me talk. Yeah, states' rights has always been a reactionary slogan. States' right.
Only the federal supreme government will save us for Soviet recollectivization. Yes, only Sovietism will save us.
This is serious now. No, I'm almost finished. I'm almost finished. If I could just remember what the last point was. 2.7. Oh.
Brain buggers.
Look, to talk then about Ron Paul's economics. Let's get down. The thing that got me going on, Ron Paul made a terrible mistake. He published his economic views on his website in the Restore America program. Now, Ron Paul, when he gets up on the stump, Ron Paul can dance and bob and weave and shuffle with the best of them. But when he puts the numbers on the page, let's look at the United States. You got about 50 people who, thanks to Bill Clinton,
he said it's going to be slowly
are
phased
in.
No one can say independence has been successful.
No. He talks about $1 trillion in cuts in $1 trillion in cuts in the first year, and then balance the budget.
Bankers, they don't want that. They want us to.
They seem to want it. Quite a few of them do want it. Peter Thiel is a pretty banker, and he seems to think it's great.
Only one member.
I don't know how many you need. Come on, you got to stop this stuff.
Your obsession with Ron Paul.
It's not. No, your obsession with defending him.
No,
let me talk to you. You are better than Ron Paul. You don't need Ron Paul. Let's take an issue like 9/11. You have stuck to your guns on 9/11
All
truth.
right, since you brought that up, Paul was asked 4 years ago about it, and he said, well, he's been so busy he hasn't been able to deal with it, but he knows about false flag. Let me talk. It's okay if I talk. You asked me a question. I'm giving you like 5 minutes at a time, Tarpley. Ron Paul, he knows false flag terror is real. There's been a CIA coup. All that. Ron Paul, I know him.
Did he say that on the presidential debates?
He said that on my show and others.
Yeah, presidential debates.
I know Ron Paul's family, man. Ron Paul is good.
He was asked.
All I know is there's bigger. Why are you so obsessed with Ron Paul?
Because I see lots of people who are useful and productive people.
Useful idiots for your Soviet model?
Who are getting hijacked by a flim-flam artist.
All right.
Ron Paul is the most successful con
60 seconds on your obsession with him because I want to get to all these other issues. Oh, really? Only Ron Paul. In the entire galaxy, it's all Ron Paul. Not Syria, not Libya, not Russia, not NATO, not Europe collapsing, not the pigs being sucked dry. Ron Paul, he's so evil, he's so bad. Tarpley, he'll save us, along with the communists.
You are undercutting. If you want to protest Bilderberg, I would say to you, go out there and say Ron Paul. I know a lot of people, including myself, who say, I don't want to hear about any reactionary Republican for the rest of my life. I'm sick of
I want a good communist candidate.
I don't want any of them. I know a lot of people who, after Bush swore that they would never vote for a reactionary Republican for 10,000 years. And now,
Hey, I'm against power structure. Can we now move on to the next? Can we now move on to the next? Can we move?
Why do we have to be tied to a cynical politician?
Webster, I exposed Obama. I exposed Bush.
But you're running interference for Ron Paul, and he's running interference for Romney. Where does that leave you?
Listen, Romney's an unknown country. I've exposed his ties to Bain, all of it. Now, listen, stop right there. Finish up with your Ron Paul thing. Let's move on to the next subject. Go ahead. Hold that. Go ahead.
A vote for Ron Paul was a vote for Romney.
Show you love.
So you're no. I take second place.
Move on from the Ron Paul
I take second place to nobody. I was the first out of the gate. I was the first, I think, in the relevant universe to expose Obama. So I have the credential. In other words, I was telling left liberals in 2008, you're being duped. Watch out. Today, I tell people like you, you're being duped by Ron Paul. Spit. Same story.
Move on to the next issue.
I suppose. Now, let me just talk about your triumphalism, right? What you're saying that the Patriot movement is whatever this is.
Oh, we're failing. You're such a good friend of liberty.
Let's talk about something real.
Live feed soon. You better get other subjects.
Okay, let's talk about what it takes. You want to break the power of finance capitalism? Because that's what Bilderberg
We got
is.
like 10 minutes on batteries.
Bilderberg is finance capitalism in NATO framework.
What is
You
it?
want to break
Phony, centralized garbage.
you want to break their power. You better find an example that works. Now, Ron Paul doesn't work. Ron Paul doesn't work.
Infowars.com doesn't work.
Adbusters. Come on, you got to stop heckling like
I'm
that.
just joking, Webster.
Yeah,
now
but-
I got to air this in. Get into the other issues.
Yeah,
We've
I
heard
am.
how bad Ron Paul is.
So not Ron Paul and not Occupy Wall Street are effective. What is effective? Let's look at Greece. The Syriza movement of Alexis Tsipras. That has gone from 4% to 30%. One of the big themes that's going on in this Bilderberger meeting is that they are terrified of Alexis Tsipras and the Syriza movement. Why? Because he has all the things we don't have. They have a leader, that's Tsipras himself. They have an organization, that is the Syriza, which is 12 components that have now been welded together into the most fighting force in the country. They now have a program. Let's go through the program. It's not like Ron Paul's. It says, roll back austerity, no wage cuts, no pension cuts. If public workers are fired, hire them again. Second point, stop anti-worker measures. Stop union busting. Rand Paul and Ron for union busting, right? They're scabbing on every union in the country. But in Syriza, it's the opposite. Third point, social justice. I know some people think that's a terrible thing. Fourth point, investigate the crash, put the felon bankers in jail. And the fifth point, debt moratorium. Don't pay Goldman Sachs, don't pay Morgan Stanley, don't pay J.P. Morgan Chase.
This is all fraud. It's all fraud.
This is what the bankers hate and fear. This is what is winning in Greece. Now, if you want to break the power of finance capital, you've got to have something on that along those lines. I would say one of the main themes being debated in here is the question of whether there'll be a coup d'etat in the next 2 weeks. The elections are on June 17th. Right now, Syriza will emerge as the largest party. The trick of the Greek parliament is if you come in first, you get 50 votes extra. You get a bonus for coming in first. If they do, we will have essentially the first anti-banker government in the Western world.
No, Iceland.
They never had an anti-banker government. They never had it.
They threw it out.
They had a social democrat who was finding ways to. The other thing about Iceland, the stuff about Iceland is baloney. You know why? Because the living standard in Iceland has been cut in half. The devaluation of the Icelandic crown cut the living standard in half. So if you want to be serious about breaking the power of the bankers, you better have those 5 things: a leader, an organization, a program, I guess it's 4, and a strategy. And the strategy is no austerity, no deals, don't enter into any austerity coalitions. Now, the other thing is, you're concerned about dictator. I'll tell you how dictatorship comes. One way is what we just saw in Greece, right? In Athens, there could be a NATO coup in Greece because Syriza, Tsipras has gone on television. There shouldn't be any Greek soldiers in Afghanistan. Why are we in NATO? And we've now got similar things going on in Macedonia, in Serbia, in Montenegro to some degree, to Croatia.
And
there's a revolt
no up front to any foreign soldiers in Greece.
Yes, and they should essentially they should get out of NATO. NATO should essentially be busted up. But the intelligence of Tsipras is he doesn't put that up front. He puts the demands that actually have mass traction. Demands that have mass traction are the ones that do something to help working families solve their immediate problems in a condition of depression. So that's what's going on. Now, dictatorship, right? You're against dictatorship. Let's see how it comes. Let's look first of all at Michigan. We have the reactionary, or really Governor Snyder in Michigan, and he says emergency management law. He says if I don't like the governor of the mayor of Benton Harbor, if I don't Lint and Pontiac and a course, and if I don't like the Detroit school system, I get to send in a dictator, and he becomes the austerity dictator of those places. It's been taken over by Rajoy, who was basically the neo-fascist prime minister of Spain. Rajoy says, if Andalusia, under the socialists, won't carry out my austerity decrees, right, and austerity, we know who's for austerity here, he says, I get to send in a dictator. Now, the worst one is Trichet, the former head of the European Central Bank, who's now on record saying, and this is a speech given at the Peterson Institute in Washington, Trichet says, if there's that's not carrying out sound economic policies, we send in a dictator. The prime minister is out. The parliament is out. We dictate economic policy.
Technocrats.
That's Papademos in Greece, who's from the Boston Fed. That's Monti in Italy, who's from Goldman Sachs. That's Draghi in the European Central Bank. In Spain, we have Guindos, the fascist, neo-fascist finance minister. He's brothers. But again, you want to break that stuff. You've got to have organization. You've got to be able to carry out a general strike.
I understand that.
You've got to be able to break their power. Not enough to say people now know that there's the Bilderberger Group. That won't help them.
They drain incredible amounts of power.
Sure.
It's going down. I said 10. It's probably 10 more minutes. Can we get a larger geopolitical?
Yeah, but this was it. This is the fighting front. What to do? I know you don't like this. You never want to talk about this. But if you want to do something, I'm telling you, not run ad busters. It's, another one. The fight to recall Walker.
Hold on just a minute.
The fight.
This is what Tarpley does. He is in a crazed mode. Our batteries are going. See it right here. Hold on. And I'm like, no, we've covered Greece. We've covered the polls. And I'm like, what about, I'm the interviewer here. I'm sitting here, he's going for like 10 minutes at a time. And I'm the demon. I'm the bad man. And listen, all I'm saying is what's happening with the pigs, what's happening in Syria, what's happening, and then I'm bad. I'm asking geopolitically as a questioner every 10 minutes a question, and I'm demonized that I never. No, you are. You're like, You're acting like I'm covering something. You said it. Hey, Tarpley, damn it. Listen, I'm covering something up, and I'm here interviewing your ass. You're in an aggressive, crazy mode, and it's pissing me off. Okay? Yeah, you did. You said, hold on a minute. You said, I don't want to talk about these issues. I want to get to Medvedev and Putin's threatening to nuke and all this crazy stuff. That's what I'm worried about. Go ahead. Since I never want to hear it, I want to get to other subjects before these things, it's about to die.
I just want everybody in Wisconsin vote to kick out the fascist Walker.
Okay, great.
Now let's go to Italy.
The other issue, I want to know about Russia.
I want to go to Italy.
What about Bilderberg having the chess player at it?
I'm for Italy. Here's big news. Fighting the bankers in Italy. Okay, got Michele Ruggiero. Michele Ruggiero is one of the gutsiest, most courageous people in the world. He's the finest investigating judge in Europe, probably in the entire Western world. Michele Ruggiero has just filed a 5-count indictment against Standard & Poor's. And he's saying you guys have been attempting to destabilize Italy.
That's right. The
destabilization.
They downgrade.
But this is now a magistrate, in other words, a judge who can issue indictments. He has completed his investigation, and he's got 5 or 6 members of the Standard & Poor's team in Italy. Now, this is fighting. Fight the banks. He's not. He is the government, but here's part of the government that's actually doing the work that needs to get done.
Fascist.
No, he's fighting those agencies that are attempting to destroy his country. Okay? Now, concerning Bilderberger and their strategic discussion, the outcome is the BRICS, right? Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. But in particular, the idea of a BRICS development bank. The BRICS development bank is, as of the last conference, now being created. And the idea there is to create a system of finance, clearing, and a development, a credit source that would be independent of the United States dollar. This is one of the things that the Bilderbergers undoubtedly discussed. I'm very skeptical of reports that don't focus on an issue of that magnitude. Now, we wanted to hear about Russia. Let's go to Russia. Actually, there are three Russians here that I can see. One is a representative of the Russian Academy of Sciences, who I think is probably pretty much the government. But then we have Anatoly Chubais. Anatoly Chubais is the expert of what? Privatization. What in school loves. Privatization. Deregulation. This is the mother of the oligarchs. In other words, it's thanks to Anatoly Chubais that we have Khodorkovsky, Potanin, Berezovsky, Guzinsky, Friedman, the rest of them. In other words, the state property of the Soviet Union was privatized to the nomenclatura, to the oligarchy, to these predators. And they have now constituted a state within the state. Right? We saw it in the presidential election.
But Putin kicked them out.
Putin has fought them more effectively than anybody else. Now, the other guy that you have, in addition to Chubais, whose name is exited all across Russia, Garry Kasparov. Now, Kasparov is a chess champion.
And he's a Bilderberg. What does that mean?
Yeah, but who is he? This is essentially somebody who he's an agitator who goes into the streets to organize a color revolution, against Putin. And his ally is, quite frankly, a Nazi. There's a guy called Eduard Limonov who calls himself a national Bolshevik, who I think his reference would get himself pretty much into the brown shirt category. Limonov is a hooligan. He's somebody who's with cops all the time in the streets to attack Putin. So when you have Kasparov, it's like bringing Limonov to the meeting. In other words, this is an affront. This is a primitive affront to Putin and Russia to have somebody of this wretched level of Kasparov. I'm amazed that he gets out. He's here now. So this is basically saying we declare war on Russia. So basically what comes out of this meeting... What
does it mean when even the Medvedev is saying nuclear war?
Because he's now he's reading the speeches that Putin writes for him. Chubais is the dark side of Medvedev and indeed the entire government. Now, what's coming out of this for U.S. domestic politics is a hard right turn. I see millions of signs. They want to dump Obama. They want to bring in Romney, Mitch Daniels. And now this is not just what they want to do. The New York Times this week has this thing about Obama's kill list, Obama's terrorist Tuesdays, how Obama wants to, he basically signs the death orders himself for Awlaki, the CIA lackey, and all these other people. It seems to me that this is quite possibly the beginning of a Watergate scandal against Obama, coming out of the establishment itself. In other words, I look back, is it like the Pentagon Papers? Is it like Monica Lewinsky? It's of this type. This morning on MSC, I was amazed. Chris Hayes of The Nation magazine, a left liberal. He's got Jacobs of the Army. He's got a panel of other people. He's got Jeremy Steele from The Nation. And they're talking about how Obama is committing murder. Now, if you want to do something designed to suppress and demoralize Obama's left liberals, the real shock troops of Obama, it's to put this story on MSNBC. Now, MSNBC is who? It's Jeff Immelt. Immelt, of course, a big support of Obama last time around. It seems to me Immelt, along with other groups in the ruling class, have now decided to get rid of Obama. A couple of others. You notice
we're seeing the Washington Post and Politico talk bad about Obama.
Yeah, it's growing. I mean, you can see that the political wind has changed. I smell Watergate, at least a scandal. Maybe not in print, but maybe. It's easy to do. It's complicated. Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton, great barometer of what the ruling class is thinking. Bill Clinton goes to the campaign trail and he says, it's not right to talk about Romney as a hedge fund hyena and an asset stripper and a zombie banker. That's not fair to him. We shouldn't do that. Because that's Obama's only hope, is to demonize Romney for what he is, which is an asset stripper, a one-percenter, and all the rest. If Clinton comes out with that, he's cutting off Obama at the knees. And he's doing it along with Cory Booker and other people. He's doing that in the service of ruling class cabal. The unemployment statistics this week were not only bad, but the previous month's results were brought from a wretched 120,000 to a microscopic 50 to 60,000. It looks to me like networks inside the government bureaucracy are also now in the line. It's time to make Obama look bad. So what this leaves us with is that this faction of the ruling class, you got to look at reality the way it is, has basically said we want a sharp right turn. So the Supreme Court in June, it's now June, the Supreme Court is going to come out on Obamacare. What might they say? They might say Obamacare is unconstitutional and we have obiter dicta, right? They get to say other things.
But you were against Obamacare.
Obamacare, the reason that they're against it is they don't want Americans to think they have a right to health care. I do think that Americans have a right to health care. I know Ron Paul says...
Let's not go off of that. You're saying it's a fake health care.
It's a bailout for insurance companies. It's whatever it is. But it operates under the theory that Americans have the right to health care, which I believe they do. That's in the FDR Economic Bill of Rights of January 1944. But now, suppose the rats cabal, Roberts, Alito, Thomas, Scalia, they come out and say it's unconstitutional and we have some obiter dicta. No more Social Security, no more Medicare, no more Medicaid, no more CHIP, S-CHIP, no more Head Start, no more WIC, no more social safety net. I know Ron Paul agrees with all that. But for most people, that would be America losing every economic right that they've won over centuries.
Ron Paul knows that this socialism is to carry out eugenics.
This is the American system.
You know about eugenics, but you love vaccines, Tarpley. You drink Diet Coke, Tarpley.
I drink Diet Coke.
You want to shoot your mouth off.
Why
do you drink Diet Coke?
I'm in the red wine faction.
Why do you drink Diet Coke? Why do you take the flu shot?
I drink pretty much anything I can get.
Flu shots?
I get this at late at night. I think you're crazy with this stuff. This is. I don't care about this issue. Hey, look, it's a smoke screen now. Come on. Come on.
Take your flu shot.
It's a smoke screen.
It's a smoke screen that your kid's got autism. Something's going on here. If
from
government
June,
does it, you love it.
From June,
if government handed out cyanide pills, he'd love it.
I'd love it, yes. From June to December. June is the Supreme Court. The obiter dicta would say every gain of the American people in labor struggle, somehow they were also crazy. They wanted to have unions and economic rights, all the things that the Austrian school tells us we can't have, to December. And December is whoever has won the election, the grand bargain. And the grand bargain, strip and flay the American people on this cross of austerity that Ron Paul loves so much.
Not a cross of silver?
From Merkel to Ron Paul and the rest of them, right? We have Ron Paul, we have the Republican Study Group, we have Ryan. and then we have Obama who does it in the most gradual way. The objection.
Yeah, Mark
I'm sorry.
Anderson has a question.
I'm sorry. Let me finish.
Your great lordship.
The objection of the ruling class to this stuff. I didn't interrupt you. The objection of the ruling class to the Obamacare is they don't want you to think you have any economic rights, and then they want to take it into December. They don't like Obama because the austerity, the looting, the sacking is too slow. It's too gradual. They want to have a sharp turn towards.
Soviet rule will help us.
They want to towards $1 trillion of cuts, which is what your candidate wants. 1 trillion of trucks. My position is that genocide against the American people is inadmissible.
We're almost out of time. Mark Anderson has a question. Come over here, Mark. Come to the back.
Sorry, this is an interview with me and you. I'm sorry.
No, but he has a question.
Fine.
We're all in here together. Our batteries
from there.
Go ahead.
Well, why did Rick Santorum drop off quickly, so precipitously? I mean, I'm just curious. He was there, and he was actually on a crest, and then boom, he's gone. I'm just curious.
The defeat of Santorum, well, you have to look at every debate where he had a chance. Ron Paul was attacking him because Ron Paul was the attack dog for Romney. And anybody who watched it should be able to that fact. So he was overwhelmed with all of that stuff.
We're down to 5 minutes on battery. It's getting us notices. It's going to die.
Hey, we've been on 5 minutes for the last 30 minutes.
Thank you.
What, you just denied our battery's dying?
I don't know. It's been going on for a long time.
Oh, just a minute.
It's like the end of La Traviata.
I'm done with Webster Tarpley. I'm going to be honest, everybody. He has accused us of assembling.
Oh, come on.
No, I'm done with you, buddy. It's over.
Come on.
No, it's done. Our batteries are dying. He's giving us notices. We never know what's going to die. He keeps saying we're making this up. You've seen us down the road where the batteries die. He keeps giving us notices. It's about to die. I said,
do you have a card?
No, I don't. Sorry.
He said
What's your website?
I'm out. Tarpley.net.
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 You got contact info on there?
Tarpley.net.
We come to interview. Let me tell you, it's very painful to be friends with Tarpley and to sit here and watch our batteries die. We're going off. And then he tells us we're making it that our batteries are dying. Hey, he gave us a 10-minute notice 20 minutes ago. It's about to die. Just said 2 minutes, Tarpley. So we'll watch Tarpley talk. The video. I know, but you just accused me of lying, man. That's pretty incredible. Here you go, Tarpley.
I thought you were a great kidder. You were always a great kidder. You always loved.
But our batteries are about to die. Go ahead.
You lost your whole sense of irony. You lost because Ron Paul has dragged you into this abyss.
Our batteries said.
You're too touchy.
Richard, did it not just say 5 minutes?
Fine.
14%.
Fine.
It says it's about to die.
It's about to die. It is dying.
I don't know.
Okay. Go ahead.
I'm here to the bitter end, Alex.
Tarpley, I like you. Let me tell you something. We're not censoring you.
No, of course not, and I'm grateful. But the question is now, time to look for new political perspectives.
I agree. I'm not saying Ron Paul's Jesus.
And that's over. So whatever it is, it's over. So now we need a perspective how to fight this economic fascism of the Romney-Mitch Daniels ticket, if that's what it turned out to be. And again, my proposal is, look at this Syriza movement in Greece. Look at what they're doing. They just said, stop all privatizations. Ron Paul wants to privatize everything. Look in the Restore Record program that Paul put on his website. In there you'll find his plan to cut 2/3 out of the food stamp budget and 15% out of the Pentagon structural budget. I thought it was supposed to all come out of the defense budget, but no. Suddenly we find that it's the social safety net that gets savaged and the Pentagon gets nicked a little bit. This is worth looking at. Other than that, I would appeal to people again. Defeat Walker in Wisconsin on Tuesday. Stop reactionary and fascist Republicans from busting unions and introducing totalitarian rule in all these states. That goes for Snyder. It goes for Kasich and others. The reason they like Mitch Daniels here at the Bilderberger Group is that he's the strikebreaker who gets it done quickly and neatly and elegantly without much resistance compared to these other states. But above all, Syriza and the idea of a program. I have a 5-point program on my website. I hope you look at it. It's a recovery program, and it will essentially give us the ability to put an end to the current world economic depression. So I think that's the strategic situation we're in. We are in a world economic depression. Once you know that, you must realize that what's going around you is not a market event. It is not a normal boom and bust cycle, but it represents a breakdown crisis of the entire world economic system. People right now can see the United States is mired in depression. Europe is sinking rapidly into a depression that is probably getting already as bad or worse as the United States. China is slowing. India is coming under pressure. The world is going into depression. This ought to indicate the need for a recovery program, not the free
got all
market.
that. What about working for the U.S. government and Russia threatening to nuke
Yeah,
us?
we've done
No, I asked you
done it all.
hours ago for this. We're about to die. Tell me the video.
We're
I
about
want
to-
your take on that.
Certainly, especially when we look at Syria, I've been paying a lot of attention to Syria.
They're saying they're invading. I mean, it's all over the news. I watched it this morning. It's bad.
We had
They
the
blow
Hula
stuff
massacre.
up.
You should know that the Hula massacre was a complete fraud carried out by a death squad of 800 killers, Al-Qaeda, Salafis, and others. Came to Hula. They burned the hospital. They killed the people coming out of it. And then they went around and killed citizens of the town who refused to join in their civil war with Assad. So the death squad thesis concerning Syria, I think, is amply confirmed. We just had Putin going to Merkel, Putin going to Hollande. Hollande is turning out to be a much weaker sister than he might have. He seems to be at least flirting with the idea of the French leading the attack once again. That has to be watched. On this side, the practical side of it is the Walter Jones resolution in the House of Representatives, the one that reminds Obama that if he starts another war, he will be impeached. I think everybody
Ron Paul
has to,
co-sponsored.
that Ron Paul ignored for 3 months and then grudgingly co-sponsored.
No, he co-sponsored.
I would like to hear
Ron
about.
Paul co-sponsored.
I would like to
Ron
hear,
Paul co-sponsored.
I would like to hear about.
Let's just be honest, Tarpley.
Let's hear. Does Ron Paul include that in his speeches on the campuses? In his stump speech?
No, he
No,
should.
he doesn't.
He should.
All right, fine. So these are significant problems because I think that's the leading edge of resistant war here inside the United States. Syria under the gun, and of course, if that happens, then that involves possible confrontation. But that is the attitude that I see coming out of this Bilderberg. Savage, genocidal austerity at home, perhaps cutting 25 to 30% of the American standard of living now with these new measures. The ruling class seems to be orienting towards this like iron filings to a magnet. The Supreme Court is likely, again, not just to say you have no right to health care, but you have no economic rights of any kind. And take that then all the way to December. It is comparable to what we had with Carter. When I started attacking Obama in the spring of 2008, actually in January 2008, I said that Obama at that time was a creature of the Bilderberger Group and the Trilateral Commission, and he would essentially be a new Carter. After Carter, the failure of the Carter administration was so catastrophic that we had 20 years of a reactionary nightmare under Reagan, and so forth. Now with Obama, if this pattern holds up, we may be going into a similar reactionary nightmare. And that's, again, where we learn that we cannot, if we're not crazy, we cannot try to save ourselves in some faction of the Republican Party. Rather, we've got to take up the mass struggle methods of Syriza. And remember, that all started here in Madison, Wisconsin, back in February of last year. That's where the mass strike started. So the mass strike dynamic is abroad in the land. Mass strike is great, but it doesn't solve anything. You've got to have those ingredients, right? Organization, leadership, program, and a strategy. If you have those, the strike can win. Without them, you fail. So all of this other stuff, chasing after ruling class candidates this way and that, no. Chasing after 20-year congressmen, 10 congressmen, or all sorts of other individuals, this is pointless. The goal has to be some kind of independent force outside of the two political. I would invite you, above all, break with the two political parties and start creating an independent force outside. Programmatic, class like Syriza, hard-hitting, fighting for working people, having demands that enjoy mass traction, not process reforms, not stuff about the free market, to help working families who need to pay the rent, stop a foreclosure, pay the tuition bill, get their food stamps, survive. There are 50 million who won't have dinner tonight if it's not for food stamps. The answer to that is not to destroy food stamps. It's to create 30 million new productive jobs. So the realm of economic program opens up before us is the area where people have got to get busy and go to work.
Why are they trying to start a war with Russia?
Well, if you you look at the need of the Wall Street and London-based financial system, it is that they have to carry the process of primitive accumulation, of looting, sacking, super exploitation. This is the logic that leads you to a concentration camp, right? It's the concentration camp on the installment plan. The reason that we had the Arab Spring was that those governments, whatever they were, that have now been largely destroyed, were some kind of barrier. They were able to say no to the bankers at some point, or might. Russia and China are able to say no. They can say you primitive accumulation beyond certain limits. And even now, beyond it, with the BRICS, with the process of the Shanghai Cooperation Group and the BRICS organ on the other side, we have the actual attempt to create an alternative world monetary system that would be independent of the dollar. So that is the offensive. In other words, the defensive part is key with the Arab world. The offensive part is key for these countries that we're mentioning, right? China and Russia in particular. And we've also got people in other parts of the world, right? In the Balkans, as I said before, it's not just Greece, but Serbia, Macedonia, Montenegro, and Croatia to some extent are all gravitating away from NATO. They'd like to be in the European Union. I also have to say that what some you were saying about the euro, I think, was profoundly wrong. The people who support the dollar, the U.S. bankers, and those who support the pound, most British, want to destroy the euro. The goal is to destroy the euro. I regard the euro as a line of defense. The euro is like a convoy. The Anglo-American hedge funds are sending wolf packs into the North Atlantic. They want to destroy stragglers. Any country that drops out of the euro will be destroyed. It'll be. If it's the Greeks, their currency will be driven into the center of the earth. If it's Germany, their currency will be driven into intergalactic space. In both cases, the living standard of the country and their exports are destroyed, especially with Germany that lives off exports. So the idea that the Bilderbergers want to defend the euro is crazy. The Bilderbergers are the shock troops attacking the euro. They're the ones who use credit default swaps against Greek, Portuguese, Irish, and so forth. And now that's where we get back to our friend Michele Ruggiero, because we've got another example of fighting. If you're a government official in this country, look at Michele Ruggiero. There's a model of intelligence and courage. Indicting Standard & Poor's, right? Here we have the Republicans saying, oh, Standard & Poor's downgraded Obama, you're responsible. In France, we had the same thing, right? Everybody's worrying about the grade, right? La note, they said. What's your credit rating? This is despicable. Great nations don't grovel in
bankers ruling countries by rating.
Yeah, but it's also, it's propaganda, and as Michele Ruggiero writes in his indictment, it is the attempt to destabilize and destroy Italy using essentially what he's arguing. I mean, I haven't read the entire indictment, but he seems to be saying Standard & Poor's is an agency of the intelligence community, and it's carrying out these attacks. So those are some examples of struggle that means, but you're not going to find it inside the Republican Party, no matter who your guy is.
All I know is, Tarpley, what about Russia? Why is Russia threatening nuclear attack?
Yeah, these are essentially warnings that have to do with two things. One is the installation of the anti-ballistic missile system. One of the worst things that happened last week was Hollande, the new Prime Minister of France, President, said he wanted to change things compared to Sarkozy. Hollande is open to the anti-ballistic missile system on French territory, right? Quelle honte, quelle honte, quelle honte. What a shame. What a horrible thing for France. Otherwise, it's in Poland, Romania, some other places. The Russians rightly feel that this is a first strike system. In other words, it's designed to have the U.S. launch a first strike, and then the disorganized Russian second strike is dealt with, shot down by these ABM things. Doesn't really deal with Iran. It's a step towards a first strike. Putin just went to Belarus. Take a look at Belarus on the map. It's an absolutely key country. It's the country that could most easily start World War III, because Belarus has Russia on the one end and Poland, NATO Poland, end. If you start a color revolution in Belarus or a civil war, you could have Polish NATO troops coming in from the west and Russian troops coming in from the east. That could get a shooting
Like
clash.
Georgia.
Yes, although there you don't have NATO immediately present, because Georgia was never a member of NATO. NATO was involved up to the next. But I'm saying, if you want to see the immediate clash of the two alliances, Belarus, that's where Putin went. So that's Lukashenko, the last dictator in Europe. He's the last holdout in Europe against NATO and the dictates of the Bilderberger group, because that's who we have here. The other that the Russians are concerned about, of course, is the port of Tartus, their Mediterranean naval station, and how they would they want to keep in its current form for their own strategic reasons, also because it's the strategic depth of Hezbollah, it's the main ally of Iran, so they want the status quo. And also, eventually the Russians must see that if this just keeps going on and on and on, right, if they're knocking over one country after another, that at a certain point it's going to get to them. And this is a little bit, it's like Hitler, right? If Hitler is knocking over Poland, Czechoslovakia, Poland, and then France, eventually it's going to get to you, British, or you, whoever, the Soviets in that case. So I think they've understood that, right? If you look at...
well, they've read...
Right, but this, we're now, I would say what we're operating in now is, if you look at the destabilization of Syria is basically patterned on what Hitler did to Czechoslovakia using the Sudetenland. Take a look at the chapter in William Shirer's Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. It's as good as any. It's basically carrying out terrorism. Now, Hitler foments terrorism in Czechoslovakia, and then he turns around and says, I got to intervene to restore order because my German minority is getting treated bad. The most recent one, though, is different. This was a false flag. This was this Hula thing. The Hula massacre is comparable to the Gleiwitz radio incident with Poland, where Himmler in this case, Himmler, Heydrich, and some others, provide dead bodies, and then they turned around and they killed us. So this is, it's reported to me by sources in Syria that the bodies, some of the bodies at least, significant bodies that were found in Hula had actually been killed in other places and then kept on ice and then brought there.
Sure, I can't believe these you were right, these bad guys. I can't believe how long this is going. Can you, Richard?
I can't believe it.
Maybe it's a good omen, a sign of divine favor for me.
They kept running down quickly. This is amazing.
Maybe I'm doing God's work after a world war immediately. To Poland, which did lead to a world war. And then the other thing is the Spanish Civil War. You know Guernica? The Guernica painting by Picasso? Fascists killing. No, it's this massacre in the Spanish Civil War.
The Dove. The 30s.
Well, it's these people getting killed, right?
No,
Picasso.
It's a wreck city.
There is, yeah.
But
that's Guernica is Hula, but it's Guernica carried out by the Nazis and by the NATO today.
Fascists? They're not going well.
They're doing well, but not for the reasons that some of your other guests had been saying. In other words, I don't share this triumphalism that there's some movement that's winning against the bankers. I don't say. Again, the judgment on that.
We're getting record numbers out. You say it's not positive.
It's positive, but is it enough? Can you shut down the United States with a political general strike? That was always the question. We thought this, you remember, you were in the middle of it, 2007. If Cheney started war, what's the answer? A general strike? The Socialist International of 1913 said, if the powers start a world war, we will respond with a general strike. Unfortunately, they didn't. There was Jean Jaurès of France who wanted to.
We got 5 minutes.
Well, 4% is where Caesar started, and they went to 30%.
No, we're almost out of power.
I know, but maybe there's something in that too. So, break the power of finance capital. Public opinion alone won't do it. It takes organization, Alex. This is the thing I would stress the most. Organization, important, but above that, there's got to be an organized mass phenomenon, not tied to the political parties, not tied to the ruling class in any form, that has its own rights. We do, and we're fighting for them.
Well, the globalists admit they want a post-industrial world. Talk about the environmental movement in closing.
Yeah, but look, let's pay less attention to what they're doing. How about what we want to do? We need a fighting movement. It's got to be class-based. It's got to have class consciousness. It's got that there's the 99%, there's the people, and then there's the oligarchy, which is 1%. And of course, the Malthusian we have here, right? Thiel and these other people, they're all that way. That is neo-feudalism. But neo-feudalism means the destruction of the United States government. It's part of neo-feudalism. You have to realize the anti-government rhetoric can be a boomerang because that's their program, right? You ask them, what's your program? States, microstates, rump states, secessionism, failed states, partition studies, as Soros now calls it.
Looting.
Huh?
Looting.
Yeah, but is rendered possible. And the British are willing to do it to themselves. If Scotland secedes from Great Britain, that will be an example for the world to see, oh, that's what we're supposed to do. The British use their own country as a kind of a show window for the policies they want to push.
An end cap.
Serbia has been carved. Sudan has been carved. Iraq has been carved. There's a plan to carve Iran, a plan to carve the United States, right? We know the 9 nations or the 12 nations, whatever it is. Anybody flirt that stuff
global corporate rulership
with the IMF and NATO above and all these petty states, impotent, squabbling little things that can't resist J.P. Morgan or Halliburton or ExxonMobil or whatever it is. So, again, Syriza, on the 7th of June, if they become the government of Greece, we will have an example. We already have an example, right? Just to have that program. Tsipras was on TV the other night for hours and responded. And this is building a movement. This is not just opinions. It's not a bunch of atomized individuals.
So who is Tsipras?
It's a fighting force. Young,
he's
that's the big danger. I've tried to point this out. Young guy in his mid to late 40s, comes out of, I think he's probably started in the Communist Party. Communist Party did entrism into another group. Communist Party left. He stayed behind. He said, goodbye, commies, I'm with you. And he's had to punch them down because they want to bring their traditional Marxist demands, and those are not the ones you want to have. Your first demand is not to get out of NATO. Your first demand is mass economic demands that have mass traction. In other words, you got to be doing something for that average person, right? Joe's six-pack needs dinner, tuition, rent, stop foreclosures. You get the idea. He needs medical care for his kid.
You got to deliver the goods.
You've got to deliver the goods. It can't be process reforms. It can't be stuff about, reforming the Congress or this kind of crazy stuff. It's incomprehensible. Even Glass-Steagall. Glass-Steagall is a great demand.
It's got to be tangible.
Glass-Steagall is a great demand, but this is mystifying for the average person. What do I care whether two banks are together or separate? It's a very issue in reality. But the average person, the leading edge has got to be, I want to assert your economic rights and help you to assert them. You see the difference? You see the difference between that and what some people seem to like? Need I say more?
Hey, the batteries have been magically full. Keep going. You're going to die for
I got a question. Webster, what American leaders do you see on the horizon that fit the bills that you're talking about? Or do you see any leadership at all that give you hope?
Here's what I say. Break out of the passive consumerist approach to politics. I have people sending me emails saying, who should I vote for? Who should I vote for? I would say, get yourself out of that mentality. Politics is basically a full-time job, or at least it's a pretty good hobby.
It takes a lot of research.
What you got to do, but it takes mass struggle. If you're in any of those states, if you're in Wisconsin or Michigan or Ohio or Indiana, fight Mitch Daniels. If you're in other states, right, in California.
See, just died. It's dying. Look, dying.
Okay.
This is still feeding. Finish your statements.
Okay.
Half the audience. Go ahead.
Where was I?
What leaders?
Yeah, look, mass struggle. Elections, presidential elections, that's all well and good if you got somebody, but we don't have anybody, won't have anybody. What can you do to change things? In California, Jerry Brown, he wants to cut. He's an austerity ghoul, and he's a total austerity ghoul. You know what you got to do with Jerry Brown? You got to take the Wall Street sales tax and ram it figuratively down his throat. In other words, Jerry Brown, you are not going to touch any economic rights of any American unless and until Wall Street pays a 1% across-the-board Wall Street sales tax. The Wall Street sales tax is coming in Europe. It's called the Euro-Tobin, and we want it. The Occupy Wall Street failed to make the Wall Street people pay for anything. Hit the Wall Streeters where it counts, in the La Banza. Make them pay 1% on all their turnover. You want to have micro-trading, high-frequency flash trading. You want to do 1 million trades per second? Great. 1% goes in the federal till. Half of that goes to the states. That way we can maintain the social safety net. Wall Street pays.
They have a technocratic banker fraud.
Let's tax their technocratic banker fraud. In other words, the problem with Occupy Wall Street is they want to complain. They're a bunch of anarchists. They want to sit around and complain. The Occupy Wall Street program comes down to, let's have a hippie commune in the park.
Well, Soros
that's no good.
runs that. It's a fake opposite.
More or less. And ad busters, don't forget them. And Graeber the anthropologist. We just saw them cavorting with Lord Julian Assange, the CIA limited hangout artist, unfortunately, on one of these television stations that people may see. We're told that we're supposed to be happy about Occupy Wall Street because they changed the conversation. Who's about the conversation? We want power. That's another point. Protest is for wimps. Revolutionaries want power. So unless you have something where your politically leads to some hope for power, you're spinning your wheels. It's too late in the day for this stuff, right? Education and changing public opinion, all necessary. But it's got to be on the path to seizing power. And protest is simply, if that's the end in itself, it's impotent.
Illustration of your goal.
Alexis Tsipras of Syriza. You got to find it where you can.
But protest isn't impotent. It's an illustration of your goal.
Yeah, fine. But it's too late for this now. You got to protest.
Say that in your own words. Illustration of the goal.
He says it's the goal. I say it's too late for this now. We've got to get power. Protest is not enough. The goal of political activity is a revolution. Power. That's what these poor kids in Tahrir. The kids in Tahrir couldn't get it. The kids in Tahrir thought a revolution is where the army takes power.
In closing, talk about how big it is to have Kasparov at this meeting, one of the first Russians.
It is a calculated insult. It's an affront to. It is an unfriendly act. Normally, the U.S. ambassador in Moscow would be called to the foreign ministry saying, why did you commit an unfriendly act by getting that agitator, that friend of Limonov and the National Bolsheviks, into your country and giving him that kind of prominence? Yeah, well, he's really a Brzezinski puppet, because Brzezinski is the specialist in the color revolution inside Russia. The other one, I was wondering if they'd have Navalny, right? Alexei Navalny is this other, he's the great Russian leader who's from Harvard, Cambridge, Yale. And he's now the Nemtsov. Nemtsov is I can't avoid it, right? Nemtsov's program is about Paul. Privatize everything, deregulate everything, austerity for the masses. I'm sorry, it is. If most people look at Ron Paul's Restore America, that looks like IMF shock therapy to me. That looks like what the IMF is trying to do to Greece, right? The people who have been striking in Europe against austerity. Can you make the connection? In other words, somehow we're supposed to believe that the second coming of Jesus Christ is the guy who says, I want to cut $1 trillion from the budget. Well, no. And everybody in Europe, any trade union can tell you, that's baloney. Huh? Or what?
What is all this Russians threatening nuclear war? That's unprecedented.
It's the anti-ballistic missile question that I mentioned before, and on Syria and Iran.
3 minutes left. The other one did die. What's happening with Syria where they use Al-Qaeda? What is happening with the announcements on Saturday shows that war is on?
Yes, I think we may be close to it. I don't know, and we've been to the brink with Iran several times, right? Many times.
Syria.
But now with Syria, right? It's the same thing. Is it real? Is it not real? Is it cyber? Is it a bluff? Leads to war by miscalculation, and so forth. The death squad. What I'm citing is the official Syrian investigation, carried out by Brigadier General Suleiman. They had a press conference. I happened to see it on Chinese TV, CCTV. They showed the Syrian general saying their finding is that a death squad of 800 killers came into the town of Hula, attacked military bases. The soldiers defended themselves but stayed fortified in the base.
And they spin it that it's a Syrian attack when it's Al-Qaeda.
That's Dr. Goebbels, right? Remember that.
What about Al-Qaeda?
they are a lot of the people in that death squad, as I mentioned before, are or Libyan Islamic Fighting Group or Salafis, right? We've now got this Salafi, and those would be some of them are from Turkey, some of them from Libya, some of them from Chechnya, and you've got probably Wahhabites from Saudi Arabia who are being recruited too. So remember, it's U.S., Britain, France, Israel, NATO, plus Saudi Arabia, Qatar, or Qatar, as we sometimes say, and United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia. That's who's attacking Syria.
Is that not a bold move? Is that not an arrogant, bold move to have al-CIA to al-Qaeda openly attack Libya and bring it down now and blow stuff up and then say, Hillary, oh, it's a horrible massacre, when it's admittedly the West doing the whole thing? I mean, that's incredible.
It is, and it's shocking, and it is, above all, appalling that we're back to the same methods that were used by Hitler. But that is where we are. These are the methods of Hitler in Czechoslovakia, Poland, and the methods of Hitler and Mussolini in the Spanish Civil War. Excuse me.
Keep going, Webster.
What's the next question?
No, but I mean, this whole thing where al-Qaeda is bad, but there are
Well, anybody who didn't understand that al-Qaeda is the CIA Arab Legion before has certainly understood from Libya and Syria that al-Qaeda is the CIA Arab Legion. I don't know if I can remember this guy's name, but we just had, the New York Times had an article, actually the Washington Post did, about the creation of a new intelligence agency, the Defense Strategy Agency, I think it's called, and it's run by a Deputy Secretary of Defense who goes back to the formation of al-Qaeda with Brzezinski and Gates in Afghanistan in the early 1980s. His name, unfortunately, given the late hour, is escaping me, but he is currently serving in the government, and he represents that great tradition. So they know all the use of irregular forces, mujahideen and so forth, from Afghanistan till now. And that has not changed. Maybe somebody else would like to.
No, we're almost out of time. Hey, Webster, you said we were censoring you. Closing comments on the state of the world.
The obvious thing about the world is that there is now a coherent opposition to the Anglo-American financier oligarchs. I'm sure the discussion at Bilderberg was largely devoted to the question of the BRICS. Above all, Putin. They hate and fear Putin. There was a huge effort to start a color revolution in Moscow. It went nowhere. It was pathetic. The people, Navalny, Kasparov, Limonov, and so forth, are pathetic. All right. Michael McFaul. This was, you remember that the attack on Libya was run by the power from the White House, along with Michael McFaul from the National Security Council, the White House. These were also the people who ran the attack on Egypt. I compared that evening, I was invited on RT, I compared Putin's return to power, Franklin D. Roosevelt winning a third term in 1940, when the question there was, would Hitler dominate the world, yes or no? No. A world historical figure of massive power and potency who is either reasserting or asserting the hold on power. This about I leave Ron Paul and these other people to attack Roosevelt, but the other comparison, of course, is de Gaulle to France again in 1958. In other words, the return of Putin is a world historical event comparable to Roosevelt 1940 or de Gaulle 58.
So he took the nukes. He had the French troops seize the nukes. He was a nationalist. Tell us about de Gaulle.
Sure, and not only was he a nationalist, but he was a dirigist, and I would stress that side, right? The story of de Gaulle is that he asserted French technological leadership. He wanted to have a nuclear industry, a peaceful nuclear industry, a nuclear deterrent, the force de frappe. He wanted to have the most modern aeronautics.
They wouldn't join NATO.
They were members of NATO, but they kicked the headquarters out.
Yeah, they had their own
NATO headquarters was in Paris. The reason it's in Belgium today
they didn't
is
trust them.
But the point is De Gaulle was a dirigist. In other words, de Gaulle was a Hamiltonian like me. He believed that government must foster and promote technological modernization, full employment, and economic prosperity. He was the opposite of the free market. He had nothing to do with deregulation, privatization, union busting. He wanted 100 million French. He wanted natalité. He said, we are going to give you family allowances. We are going to give you health care. The French social safety net today is one of the most developed in the world, thanks to de Gaulle. That's what the IMF would like to attack. That's what the people at the European...
You're saying for eugenics.
No. This is the health of the French people. When you see a hospital, do you see eugenics? Is that all there is?
Well, you're not listening to me. I said they want to get rid of the safety net.
Oh, they want to go over to eugenics. Yeah, they want to kill people. De Gaulle was, again, he wanted 100 million Frenchmen. He wanted to redress
How did they let him, though? Because I read where they sent the French military in to actually seize the nukes. You know that, right? They actually had a little quiet coup against NATO.
Well, the French developed their own, right?
But they had they had to seize some of their.
They expelled NATO.
Yeah, you know about that.
They expelled NATO and every part of it.
They realized it was a coup.
Right.
A EU coup.
They go 20 times.
35.
They try to kill him 20
Yeah.
35 times, according to my count. The interesting thing about de Gaulle is he had the sense to kick out the NATO apparatus. Germany, by contrast, was plagued by Baader-Meinhof terrorism, Italy by Red Brigades and other terrorism. They kept the NATO structure. France kicked them out. France kicked them out. France kicked them out. France kicked them out, and they didn't suffer so much from that. Because he was a nationalist. He believed in the role of the state. He believed in it. He was a statist. I have a book. It was given to me by a French ambassador.
Doesn't de Gaulle
Listen, I'm going to tell you though
it
now.
means the Frenchman.
No, of France.
Of Gaulle, yeah.
And a French ambassador, Raymond Offroy. Listen to this story. It's an important one. Offroy was the French ambassador to Mexico City. He was the one who brought de Gaulle to the state visit in Mexico. And during this visit, they sat together, and he said, de Gaulle said to him, Offroy, we have done this under the nose of the Americans. We've gotten right here into their backyard, and we're adding French values and French trade here in Mexico. So this guy, Offroy, gave me a book in French about sens de l'État, the sense of the state. A great statesman means you know what to do with the state, not smash it, not break it up, not go for secessionism or God knows what, but to see the positive value of the state. That's de Gaulle. And it means dirigism. You can call it protectionism, mercantilism, Hamiltonianism. I'm all those things. De Gaulle called it dirigism, le dirigisme. And he says, we're not going to have a command economy, but we're going to have planning. We're going to build airports. We're going to build the fast rail. You know, you can go from Paris to Marseille in 2 hours on the TGV. Why do they have the best airports, the best trains, the best research in many areas in Europe? Because de Gaulle, nuclear power, obviously, because de Gaulle made the decision with the priorities of France. Of course, the parliament, the political process played a role. But he didn't say, let's sit around and see if the free market gives us something. Because then for sure, Anglo-Americans would have destroyed him. So I think this is interesting.
Where is France today with Hollande?
As I said before, Hollande, some things he wants to get the troops out of Afghanistan. Very, very negative is that he's willing to have the U.S. Anti-ballistic missile system brought in. Very negative is that in threatening noises against Syria. Hollande, of course, is a corrupt individual. But what you have to hope for is de Gaulle also left behind a bureaucracy, which has been, at least in the not-so-distant past, the French bureaucracy was a big advantage, because the French bureaucracy meant that no matter who the president was, you had these kooks like Mitterrand or Chirac, I don't know. But the French bureaucracy was there to say, you are going to serve France. It's being eroded, I'm afraid. Sarkozy, of course, was a catastrophe for France, right? Sarkozy betrayed everything. And he brought France back into the NATO command structure for the first time. They should get out of it again, as should Greece and Italy. The guy that I knew in Italy was a guy who had been the deputy interior minister. This is the guy who commissioned the Moro dossier back in 1970. And he said, for Italy, he said, we have to have anti-terrorism tous azimuts, in all directions. And this is de Gaulle's phrase. De Gaulle's phrase was, have your defenses going in all directions. Not just the Soviets, but the British and the U.S. and everybody else. And the guy that I worked with in this terrorism study, he said, we need tous azimuts. We have to realize that terrorism doesn't necessarily come from East Germany or the Soviets, but it comes from the U.S. and the British. And he was absolutely right.
Well, Tarpley, we've now censored your interview.
Okay.
All right, so you have to make all your...
I see you have, what you're using is the rope-a-dope strategy.
So long because he can cut.
Well, no, you're like...
It's live, isn't it? It's live.
I can't believe this was supposed to be an hour ago.
It's live, isn't it?
Yeah. The other one died
It's
like
live.
an hour ago.
Va in onda.
No, no, no.
Va in onda.
Yeah, it's all live.
It's alive?
Yeah, it's live. And he's like, you're censoring me. I'm like, no, it's about to die. It never died.
Alex.
One died.
The thing that what you did wrong was in 2006, Alex. In 2006, I told you you should run for president. You have to raise your sights. Don't take in place second fiddle backseat to some politician. You should think about political activity.
Hey, Hollande was business friends with the new Bilderberg chairman, Henri Costres. Did you talk about that? Is that significant?
It doesn't sound good. I think it's ENA, isn't it? National de l'Administration. The ENAC.
Honestly, I forgot the name.
It's the French School of Administration. It's like you have the Polytechnique, the Ponts et Chaussées.
They prepare the big leaders.
I'll take your word for it, but is it significant?
It's not good. Hollande, I mean, Hollande, what can we call Hollande? A socialist who doesn't believe in socialism at all.
That's a corduroy mic. Point at your mouth. No, point the mic at your mouth.
Oh, sorry.
Resistance inside his own party.
Right. There are people who are now getting, when he said he was willing to have the USABM in France, there are a lot of people who were appalled.
Again, we're censoring you, Tarpley. Anything
Right.
else? What about the great demon Ron Paul?
Well, the other thing I wanted to say is it is better not to say that the anti-Bilderberg demonstration is for Ron Paul, because in doing this, you're going to keep a lot of people out. A lot of people are going to say, I don't want anything to, I don't like finance capital, but I don't like some Republican.
But we're just identifying the global elite. People can make whatever decision they want.
No, but I would not say that this demonstration is somehow that everybody there was for Ron Paul. I don't think it's true.